So the unofficial Brandon Aiyuk trade deadline is upon us. On Tuesday, April 1st, the 49ers will owe Brandon Aiyuk a $22.9 million option bonus, and that will effectively close the trade window that the 49ers tried to build in when they executed the big contract extension with Brandon Aiyuk back in August. Here's a look at exactly what is happening and how the financial dynamics work. The green column is the option bonus. As you can see down here, $22.9 million in total. By NFL rule, you can prorate signing and option bonuses against the salary cap up to 5 years. So 22 divided by 9 divided by 5 is 4.6 million. We'll hit this season, 4.6 in 2026, all the way through 2029. Because San Francisco will have to administer this to their salary cap, they won't be able to get out of any of the $22.9 million if they don't trade Brandon Aiyuk before April 1st. And that means they'll essentially be tethered to him for 2025, because it would be a lot to pay him $22.9 million guaranteed for this season and then trade him. This is not salary you can trade away after April 1st. In addition to the 2025 trigger, $26.2 million of Aiyuk's 2026 salary also guarantees on April 1st. That is represented primarily by the teal column. That's primarily going to be paid through an option bonus that is due on April 1st of 2026. However, it vests into a full guarantee on this April 1st. The 49ers can still trade Aiyuk ahead of the 2026 season if that's the decision that they make next offseason, but that money is now going to be guaranteed for Brandon Aiyuk. So essentially, the 49ers are holding on to 2 years, $50 million fully guaranteed, 26.2 plus 24.9, a little bit over $50 million fully guaranteed for Brandon Aiyuk. And it makes sense that teams are not interested in trading for him because his return prognosis is mid-season. So we can understand why the 49ers would be interested in offloading this contract, and we can also understand why another team would not be all too interested in taking on the contract. The 49ers are simply in between a rock and a hard place with Brandon Aiyuk, where their best path forward is to keep Brandon Aiyuk around and hope that he turns the corner in his recovery and becomes a very productive receiver for them again. When they initially architected the contract back in 2024, the 49ers included this April 1st trigger date so they could potentially trade Brandon Aiyuk after the 2024 season. It was 1 year at a $22.9 million signing bonus, the blue column for the 49ers. That prorated against the cap, but they knew they were going to have to pay that anyway, so they didn't care. It was that plus the $1.1 million base salary last year, added up to about 1 year and $24 million. Would have been a fair price for that first season. Then they theoretically had until April 1st to trade Brandon Aiyuk of this year and offload the rest of the contract, which is worth about $110 million over the remaining 4 years, or about $50 million guaranteed over the next two. However, the worst case scenario hit for the 49ers, and that was that Brandon Aiyuk tore his ACL and his MCL. So all of a sudden, any potential trade demand for Brandon Aiyuk went out the window. San Francisco unable to offload the contract, and it still had injury guarantees. So 49ers now have to absorb those injury guarantees themselves. They can't just ship them off to another team. Of course, the 49ers signed DeMarcus Robinson this offseason. He's going to be able to play some of the X position for San Francisco. Jawan Jennings also is going to be able to do some of that. Ricky Pearsall emerged at the end of 2024. I still think San Francisco is going to need another body in the wide receiver room. I think they might pursue that through the draft, or Amari Cooper is still out there. Best case scenario for the 49ers is that Brandon Aiyuk does return for this football team, and he plays well down the stretch of the 2025 season. If that happens, well, then we can revisit this contract and we can see if there is renewed trade demand for Brandon Aiyuk ahead of 2026. in which case the 49ers might be able to offload him for draft compensation, or maybe he plays well enough in 2025 down the stretch and the relationship with the 49ers is refreshed and renewed, so the 49ers want to keep him heading into 2026. I think throughout all of this, we cannot forget that Aiyuk played really damn well in 2023 to earn the contract that he did sign with the 49ers. And I know of all the drama. I know that he sat on the deal for 3+ weeks before finally signing it. And I know that the 49ers were fed up with the whole situation. And I know that he didn't play well to begin the 2024 season, probably in large part due to the fact that he missed training camp, which was his own fault. And I know that all of that snowballed, and then of course, he tore his ACL in week 7 against the Kansas City Chiefs, and nobody was happy at the end of this. So I know that this is a relationship that is not in its best possible spot right now. But sometimes business terms dictate that you have to just deal with what's in front of you. And that's what the 49ers must do right now. That's what Brandon Aiyuk must do right now. And potentially this relationship is turned around moving forward. At least that is what the 49ers will have to have happen if they are to optimize this situation. Let's take a quick look at the 49ers depth chart. Let's visualize this at the wide receiver position, because I think that this ties into the 49ers' larger philosophy as a football team. I've got the players who are 49ers core pieces, foundational pillars, highlighted in yellow. When they signed Brandon Aiyuk, they obviously hoped that he'd be the foundational pillar that they're currently missing in the receiver room. Maybe he can return to that spot, but the acrimony of the negotiation and the poor performance to start 2024, still remember that drop against Kansas City. There was a bad drop also against the Rams earlier in the season. All of that pushed Aiyuk out of core pillar category. That's why they've been interested in trading him. But obviously, they're going to be very likely to have to stick with him over the course of 2025. Perhaps he can earn his way back into that yellow shading, or perhaps somebody like Juwan Jennings can earn his way into yellow shading. I think that Jennings has already done a lot on the football field to become a foundational pillar, but the 49ers still have to commit to him contractually in a way that is befitting of a foundational pillar. Either way, the 49ers need one of those at the receiver position, because they have those at other spots. Purdy, McCaffrey, Juszczyk, Kittle, Williams on the offensive side of the ball. They need somebody at that wide receiver position, especially with how much they struggled to separate last season without Brandon Aiyuk available. So what exactly is going to happen at wideout? Is it going to be Amari Cooper? Is it going to be another rookie added to the mix? I've got a red shade here to indicate that I believe receiver is still a position of need for the 49ers. But the bottom line is that on April 1st, the $22.9 million 2025 option bonus will trigger for Brandon Aiyuk. That's almost certainly going to keep him with the 49ers, because nobody's been interested in trading the high price for him prior to this, and they probably won't prior to April 1st. And the 49ers and Aiyuk are going to have to make this relationship work. Other triggers on April 1st come for Nick Bosa. $22.7 million of his base salary in 2026 is guaranteed. Yetur Gross-Matos will see $3 million of his 2025 salary guaranteed. Deommodore Lenoir will see $6.5 million of his 2025 salary guaranteed. Colton McKivitz will see $2.2 million of his salary guaranteed. And George Odom, this is one that's interesting. We'll see $1 million of his 2025 salary guaranteed. We'll see if the 49ers hold on to George Odom through the April 1st trigger date. All right, there's your 49ers update. Guess where I'm off to? West Palm Beach, Florida for the owners meeting. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the alarm bell for the notifications, because there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff coming out of the next couple days.